Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk, producer and host of the Public Relations Review podcast. When I conceived this program, my idea was to provide public relations practitioners with a wide variety of solid, useful information and guidance from public relations professionals across America. And we are doing that. I will continue to cover important topics such as crisis communications and artificial intelligence and other such important topics. But I will also address other issues such as diversity in public relations, marketing to women, public relations trends, various data concerns, and much more. From time to time, I will also invite vendors of public relations products on to help you better understand how these products can improve your efficiency and your effectiveness. You will learn a lot from our podcast, so thank you for listening, and please inform your colleagues about the Public Relations Review podcast and continue listening. Thank you so very much.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review to our listeners across America and around the world. Now, perhaps you, as I often do, wonder how do celebrities and high visibility people with various backgrounds get opportunities to promote or support various products, services, or causes? Well, my guest today has an answer. Rick Bacharach founded Celebrity Focus, located in Chicago, Illinois, back in 1987, with the basic idea that his experience would offer exceptional value to brands. He understood the needs of talent and could put that to work for brands. Celebrity Focus has connected famous people with famous brands in more than 4,000 programs since 1987. They research, recommend, negotiate, and facilitate corporate talent relationships from the buyer's point of view, and they ensure that they meet their clients' strategic goals. His background as an athlete and collegiate coach led to a career as an agent and to a vice president of marketing for two major sports agencies, IMG and CSMG. It is this perspective that gave him the knowledge necessary to build great deals that consider the needs and interests of each party, thereby finding the true win-win solutions that deliver results. Rick, welcome to Public Relations Review.
Well, thanks, Peter. Glad to be here.
Well, look, let's start by asking, I guess for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it the mating process. How does this begin that you can connect celebrities to brands?
Well, it's a great question, and certainly a great place to start. I think the answer actually begins a little bit before the mating process, and I'll put it into the context of public relations. We have practitioners, of course, and PR teams that, first of all, consider using celebrities and as spokespeople in campaigns and programs, various PR initiatives. So I think that one of the things that is important to recognize right out of the gate, first of all, what's the role of the celebrity spokesperson? Why do some campaigns have a spokesperson and other campaigns not? So we begin with the question of what's the role of the celebrity spokesperson, and the answer very simply is to serve as a vehicle for the dissemination of brand messages. So when we've got particular initiatives that are looking for a beacon, somebody or something to cut through the immediate clutter, a great way to do that is, of course, to utilize a spokesperson, and of course the celebrity cuts through even stronger than perhaps a brand executive or someone of that means. So from a process perspective, once they make the decision, our clients come to us, and we will help them, first of all, formulate a plan, not necessarily based on who the right person is initially, but what's the right profile of the personality. What type of person are we looking for? What's the criteria that they have to meet? Is it male, female? Is it age skewed? Is it somebody known for a particular field, either through a role perhaps that they've played on television or in film, or is it perhaps the life they lead? Where's the relevance? So we ask the next question is, why does this person or this profile of a spokesperson make sense? Once we've got that nailed down, and after we've worked with our clients through the process of budgeting, then we're able to actually embark on next developing a set of criteria for a candidates list or a few candidates lists, developing a list of folks that both work within the budget and also meet all the personality criteria. After that, then we begin the dance. We develop lists of candidates that hopefully speak to those issues of relevance and of budget. We present comprehensive lists, and then we narrow that down based on the needs and interests of the client. We narrow that down to perhaps the top 3 or 4 candidates before we begin that contact phase. So hopefully that addresses at least part of what you asked me about the mating process.
Well, it certainly does, and it also raises another question for me, because sometimes people can gain notoriety, and for positive reasons, through something that they've done in the news, and it gets on the news, and it touches people in a positive way. Can then those people also be considered as spokespeople for a brand if, in fact, what they did or why they're getting that notoriety also fits the profile that you're looking for?
Well, the answer is, of course, yes. From my perspective, my specialty is, of course, the world of celebrity. The world of celebrity today is a vastly different world than it was 25 or 30 years ago. Back in the day, what I will call the day, celebrity was defined pretty narrowly by very well-known personalities who were entertainers, actors, actresses, athletes, political figures, folks that were known for those, for their expertise in those particular fields. Nowadays, the world of celebrity has expanded pretty dramatically due to things like what's known in the industry as non-scripted television or reality shows. Mm-hmm. We've seen the evolution of television itself pretty dramatically away from simply being entertainment networks for theatrical productions, and now we see a lot of real people TV. So, that whole genre of what is a celebrity today is vastly different than it was 30 years ago. You look at the explosion of networks like Food Network and DIY and HGTV and places like that, TLC, you've got all these vast forms of broadcast that simply didn't exist, and as a result of it, you have a whole new field of celebrity today that, once again, 25, 30 years ago really didn't exist. And that doesn't, of course, even address the field of experts, category experts, nowadays social media stars. The darlings of the PR world today are quote-unquote influencers. But in the true world of celebrity, people can be known for lots of different things. They can be known for an expertise in their field, but also for how they live their life. And I think all of that goes into that. It all speaks to the process of, why does this person make sense for this particular role?
That brings up an interesting question. Now, from your point of view, you mentioned celebrities and you mentioned influencers. From your particular perspective, do you see a difference there?
I do. I think that, again, I think of celebrity, and I define it narrowly down to fame. I'm still a very strong believer that truly famous people are what moves the needle. I'm not suggesting, of course, that influencers don't have impact, but I think that the field remains very, very new and a little less definable than many of the practitioners may want to believe. Social media following alone doesn't give us enough. We simply don't have enough data at this point to really understand the impact, to know what the composition of those audiences are. We do. I know there's plenty of folks that would argue that, and they believe that it's truly the essence of target marketing. I'm not convinced of that. We've seen things, case studies recently, luxury brands, for example, who aligned with fashion-oriented influencers because the numbers were staggering, only to find out that the true composition of that particular audience was an awful lot of a Kmart and Target type buyers as opposed to luxury market buyers. Mm-hmm. So you have a case, for example, where you have an influencer, and I know that's merely one example, but you have a case where you have an influencer with remarkable numbers, but the composition of what's in those numbers and what those folks are being driven to, in the sense of true alignment with the brand, did it really make sense? At the end of the day, the answer was no. And frankly, I've seen an awful lot of that. So from my perspective, I'm still a believer in the concept that celebrity sells and true celebrity sells. And for me, true celebrity means a mainstream famous people.
Well, sort of expanding on that question, when you talk about moving the needle, a lot of times that simply means how much sales did you actually drive. Now, is that the only criteria, the major criteria, or are there other issues that they would like to see happen as well of having a celebrity representation?
Sure, I think that's a great question. And again, it goes back to, why do brands use celebrities? And simple answer, because celebrity sells. It sells in a variety of ways. Increased sales is certainly one place, but we've seen impact in increased stock value, value over competition, enhanced brand image, market share gain, brand reassurance. So it isn't always just one thing. In fact, it's several things. There's a lot of reasons that brands align with celebrities.
Well, let me ask you then, knowing that, I'm just wondering now, because there are some celebrities who perhaps maybe make a living at this, do they also keep track of their data so they can say, well, yes, I represented X brand last year, and from when I started until when I maybe ended that, or whatever it is, a year or so later, that sales went up by thus and so, recognition went up by, do they keep track of their own data under those circumstances?
So that would be probably a yes and no answer. The average celebrity probably doesn't. Most celebrities are in fact really focused on what they do for a living. So their attention is really put on their primary craft, their primary employment. And whether that's their performance as an athlete or as an entertainer, a musician, actor, actress, what have you, their focus is on their craft. And endorsement work, spokesperson work is really secondary to them. Now, we've also seen far greater sophistication on the representation side of the business. So agents, managers, personal managers, business managers, that whole sector of the business has become much more sophisticated, again, during this period of the past 20 years or so. So the marketing reps in particular, I would say, are keenly aware of performance. They may not always, unless they're in sales mode, they may not always want to reference it, but they have access to the information. And certainly when a famous person endorses a product or is a spokesperson for a product, they do a pretty good job following up to find out how did the relationship perform. Mm-hmm. It, of course, becomes a sales function for them to be able to encourage buyers to consider their people the next time. But they also want to know. So I think in general, the talent may not know keenly. Some do, but for the most part now they're on to their next primary job, and but their representatives usually have an idea of how well campaigns have performed. And talent, by the way, of course, is just one part of the performance. I mean, the campaigns, the celebrity can impact her or his performance in the campaign or the initiative, but they're not the ones that are pulling the trigger. They may be delivering the messages, but they're not, they're not the Wizard of Oz with their hands on the controls behind the curtain, so to speak. That's where success really lay in the hands of the practitioners and the teams.
Mm-hmm. So success really can be measured a number of different ways. It just depends upon what the buyer, so to speak, is looking for as an outcome. And as you said, the agents and people keep metrics right these days on everything. So, how many TV sets were tuned in, what time of day they watched, what channel they watched on, all of that sort of stuff. As you said, somebody has that data because sooner or later they're going to need to have it.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And again, if we put it into the realm of PR, we have the ability, not me, but of course the marketplace has the ability to measure results pretty significantly, especially where most of these campaigns and initiatives are focused on earned media. I think the access to data is pretty significant. So they're going to know, the PR teams are going to know pretty immediately and comprehensively results.
Now,
and they'll not just know growth numbers; they'll be able to target those results as well. They'll see where it performed best, and whether it met its targeted criteria or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, also celebrities, in addition to perhaps selling a product, there might be some who want to be involved in a cause. How are prices for those individuals, one, determined? If in fact they do want to charge for it, I'm sure there might be some that volunteer because they support the cause. But let's say a non-profit organization versus one that's paying, how are costs different to bring that particular person on board?
So, I wish there was a standard answer for that, and there really isn't. Some of them are paid engagements and others are not. So number one, we always look at casting these opportunities to a single thing. I call it finding the fit. And in that process of finding the fit, it really comes down to a word that I mentioned earlier, that's relevance. Why does this person make sense? And that door swings both ways, both from the brand, or in this case, the nonprofit's perspective, as well as the celebrity. From the celebrity's perspective, the first thing they ask themselves is, why does this make sense? Why am I relevant? Why is this important to me? So in certain cases, there are engagements that are driven strictly altruistically, and though more often than not, those are driven by personal experiences. Do I have a close family member who suffered from whatever the condition might have been? Is there a reason if I'm performing something for, let's say, dyslexia, is this something that affected a member of my family? Did my mom have breast cancer, for example? So is there a direct connection and something that compels me individually to want to do this and perhaps even seek it out? And in other cases, and I'll step back for just a moment, I will say that for most celebrities, there are very few days that go by where they are not receiving inquiries or offers or requests, often many of them in a given day. Mm-hmm. So, there's the one of the unique things about a famous person is they have very little personal time to work with. Their primary engagement is, of course, whatever their job happens to be, acting or as an athlete, what have you, but they're pretty heavily programmed. So the amount of time they have available for just about anything other than their primary employment is highly valued and also very thin. There's not a lot of it. So most celebrities are very selective in what they're able to do, and sometimes it comes down to, can I do this conveniently? Can I do it easily? Will you come to me? Will you shoot it at my home? Is it within a few minutes of my home? Sometimes it's a convenience-driven thing, piggybacked with personal interest. Now, those are the causes that are really, I'll call it the silver bullet causes. You know, it just it strikes a chord. There's a real reason that resonates with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you and I both know, there's no shortage of causes, special interests, nonprofit organizations, and all of those combined, they're competing for the attentions of the celebrity world. There are times when campaigns can be supported organizationally. We see a lot of that in healthcare, where campaigns are actually driven by a healthcare brand. So throughout the years, one of the things that I've done an awful lot of work in, such that at one point, one of my former partners told me we were the Disease of the Month Club. But we've represented quite a few pharmaceutical companies throughout the years, and that's a great example where through things like providing educational grants, they'll actually fund public service programs.
Mm-hmm.
So several years back, we had a client, it was called TAP Pharmaceuticals. They were very, very active in supporting urologic diseases. They had a product that treated advanced stage prostate cancer. And among the various things that they did, ultimately they were marketing driven, but they were also, you can never look past the contributions that they make to society, but they were providing educational grants to the American Foundation for Urologic Disease for the development of PR initiatives and programs that were designed to drive consumers into their physicians to get tested. Simple things like PSA testing for prostate cancer. So this is a case where the celebrities were driven by personal interest anyway. There was already a reason that each of the dozen or so people that we involved in that campaign, there were reasons why they were interested, but at the end of the day, you still had a pharmaceutical company providing funding for the development of the campaign, and providing honoraria to the talent was part of that. So we've seen it both ways, and it exists quite a bit both ways.
Well, and sort of getting back to at least to the nonprofit side, for those organizations that might be considering bringing in a celebrity to help endorse their particular efforts or cause, what would you advise them to be careful about, and the questions that they need and information that they need before making a decision other than their popular high visibility person? What nitty gritty information do they need to look for?
Well, I think some of the benchmarks are the same regardless of what the application is. Anybody considering using celebrity talent has to be concerned with overall due diligence. So you look at the field of candidates that you're considering, and when you narrow that list down, you start getting serious about who you want to approach. Then you've got a secondary level of research to make sure that the way the person leads their life is consistent with the values of your organization. You're always going to execute baseline research to make sure that they're a fit, of course, but also that their behaviors, everything that they've done leading up to the engagement, even if it's on a volunteer basis, you're doing the best you can to make sure there's no skeletons in the closet, which is rare these days, but at least,
that's true.
at least not so overwhelming that it dooms your campaign or program from the very beginning. Society has changed, of course, over the years, but and I don't know too many people. We live in that don't cast stones time, but I think you do the best you can to make sure that the person is a good fit with your organization and that they've led their life in a way that's consistent with the values of your organization. If you narrow it down to those two things, that's a great starting point. The other thing is you also want to consider what else that person has done. Have they overexposed themselves doing other similar campaigns in the last couple of years? Have they done things in the past 10, 15, 20 years that might be run contrary to your organization? Were they pro this and now they're anti that? So you try to get a comprehensive look, and you do, to a degree, you're reliant on talent representatives to provide a lot of that information. And most of them are pretty good and honest, and some are not. So your ability to conduct research beautifully nowadays, we have things like the World Wide Web, that we can go and research those things. I remember a time when I first started in this business that the internet didn't exist, and research had to be done at libraries, and our favorite person was the reference librarian at the local library. Thank God things are different today, and information comes in so many different forms. It's hard to hide anything nowadays.
Well, I agree with you. So basically, you're saying due diligence really includes a deep dive on the internet, just to be certain that you've covered all your bases as best you possibly can.
Well, the only thing I would amend there is to say relatively certain.
Okay.
We do not live in a perfect world, but we do the best we can.
Well, Rick, let me say thank you. This has been very, very insightful. I have really appreciated you taking the time to come join us here on the Public Relations Review. And do you have any closing remarks for the audience?
No, I would just, I think I would tell folks that the benefits far outweigh the risks. Don't be gun shy. Fame is a very useful tool when you can use it in favor of your brand or organization. While we've seen some negative examples, we've seen far more that are positive. And, we live in an age where there is simply so much of everything out there. The reality is that if you understand why celebrities are used, and if you use them effectively to cut through clutter and to make sure that there's relevance to the selection you've made. It's not always about the biggest name, but it is always about why that person makes sense. So if you approach it from those perspectives, that you're going to have success working with famous people.
Well, great. Rick Bacharach, founder and CEO of Celebrity Focus, I want to say again, thank you so much for joining us. And to our listeners, please, share this information with your colleagues and join us again for the next edition of the Public Relations Review.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.